Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to take a head-to-head comparison look with the outgoing Subaru WRX and stack it up against the all-new and redesigned 2022 year model. Both of these WRXs in today's video are the premium trim level. The 2021 is finished off in black crystal with an MSRP just over $32,000. And for the 2022, this model is finished off in blue sapphire with an MSRP just over $33,000. So really not much of a price increase from the outgoing model to the all-new and redesigned model. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the exterior differences as well as the interior, get these both out on the road and see how they drive, and then we'll come back on our final thoughts on the all-new and redesigned Subaru WRX. So to start off with the outgoing model, this features a 2-liter flat-4 turbocharged engine paired to the 6-speed manual transmission. It pumps out 268 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. That power is sent to all 4 wheels. It weighs in right around 3,300 pounds. It'll do 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds, up to its top speed of 155 miles an hour. And it has a fuel capacity of 16 gallons. You can expect to see around 20 miles per gallon in the city and 27 out on the highway. As we move on to the newest generation for the WRX, this has a 2.4-liter flat-4 turbocharged engine, again paired to that 6-speed manual. It pumps out 271 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. It's all-wheel drive just like the previous generation, weighs about the same at 3,300 pounds. It'll do 0 to 60 though in 4.7 seconds. It has a top speed of 145 miles an hour, and with a fuel capacity of 16.6 gallons, you'll expect to see around 19 miles per gallon in the city and 25 out on the highway. And then as we move on to the exterior styling now, we're going to start off with the previous generation where this has a much narrower grille. The headlights are also much wider, as you'll see here soon. This has fog lights and turn signals down in the lower corners, and there's also plenty of cutouts in the lower section of the grille. You can see all that trim is finished off in plastic as well as surrounding the fog lights and the turn signals. And this has a very massive hood scoop to provide a lot of cooling to that top-mounted radiator. As we move on to the all-new generation now, the grille is much wider. It fills in the space between the headlights, I think, much better. However, the headlights are much smaller as well. A little bit more contoured lines surrounding that as well. Plenty of cutouts in that upper grille. And as you can tell, the plastic trim from the previous generation has made its way onto this newer generation. However, this entire lower section is now one piece. Fog lights are still in the lower section of the bumper, but the turn signals now are up in the headlights, where this does have LED headlights, and it has a really nice design, a little bit different, but it still retains a similar design as the previous generation. A lot of cutouts are in that lower section, and this has a little bit wider of a hood scoop, a little bit different design for the lines coming down the hood, but for this hood scoop, it's very functional, still providing maximum cooling to that top-mounted radiator. And then moving on to the side profile now for the previous generation, this has a really nice set of black wheels. Obviously you can get some different wheel designs just depending on the trim level. There's a small chrome trim badge just behind the front tire as well, with some more trim pieces in that lower side skirt. This has body colored side mirrors. This premium model also had a sunroof as well, so it was nice to see that for this premium edition, and really nice lines run down the side. And as we move on to the all-new generation for the WRX, this has what's called the black cladding. It's the plastic surrounding the fender flares as well as in the lower side skirts and in that front bumper, as you already saw. Really nice set of wheels for this model. This even had some functional cutouts in the back section of the front fender flares. A little bit different of a design having that. It's not everyone's favorite. To me, it personally kind of looks like it's a Subaru Outback. It has that kind of off-roady lifted design to it rather than having that sports car with the body colored fender flares. So that throws it off just a little bit. I still think it has a great design for what it is. This premium model did not have a sunroof. I'm not sure if that was an option, but going back to the side, this even has some wider fender arches both in the front and the rear, just to give it a little bit more of an aggressive appearance. And then making our way to the rear end now for the outgoing model, has a trunk lip spoiler. The taillight housing is a little bulky compared to the new generation. This has a backup camera, more of that plastic trim in the lower section of the bumper, as well as the quad tip dual exhaust. Has kind of a box seat design to it, as you'll see once we compare it to this all-new generation, where the taillights almost look like a Honda in a sense with that design that they have. There's a black trim piece running right through the trunk. This also has a backup camera as well. More of that black cladding in the lower bumper, and there's actually a lot more than the previous model. Still retains the quad tip dual exhaust as well. And then as we work onto the cargo space for the outgoing model, has a good amount of space. It's really unchanged from the newer generation. There's a nice flat surface where you can place all your items, obviously, and then you can fold the back seats down to provide you with a lot of interior cargo for this family sedan, which is great to see. On the newer model, you can use the button on the key fob for it to open. It is manual to close it, however. Same amount of space with cutouts on the driver and passenger side. And then up underneath the floor, there's a little bit of storage compared to the previous model, so you can place in some smaller items. And just like the other model, back seats fold down. So this is still a very capable and usable family sedan that also has a lot of performance to it. And then as we move on to the rear seats for the previous model, good amount of space. I'm 5'10" and I was easily able to fit in the back seat. Plenty of room for anything that you'd like. There's also an armrest as well as 2 cup holders that you can use. And it just gives you a good amount of space if you need a full 4-door vehicle for space for your backseat passengers. And then from this angle with the back seats down, you can see a nice flat surface. For the newer generation, for the WRX, this has a little bit different of a design for the seats. Really nice two-tone, and the backseat room is pretty much the same as the outgoing model. Again, at 5'10", I was easily able to fit in the back. Plenty of headroom as well for this model. Still retains that armrest and cup holders as well. And then just looking at this angle again with the back seats down, plenty of space for all those items. However, this does have the addition of 2 USBs now in the back, so it makes it very convenient for your backseat passengers to charge any electronics that they may have. And as we move on to the front seats now, for this door panel, it had a really nice design with all the black leather and the red stitching. Take notice of how all the window controls are with the grab handle. It's a pretty level surface. Release handle is just above that. There's a little bit of storage space in the lower section of the door as well. And then moving on to these cloth seats, they had a really nice design, very good bolstering support, and these were all manual adjusting from the lumbar, the height, as well as being able to move them forwards and backwards. And then over on the all-new Subaru WRX, look at the window controls. There's a much different rake with the grab handle, so it's a much different design. There's some carbon fiber trim surrounding that release handle and a little bit more indentions just above that grab handle, as well as having that storage space down below, so a little bit different of a design. And we have a little bit more of an aggressive bucket seat with a two-tone design, all of that red stitching. They are still manual adjusting seats, however, just like the outgoing model. And coming back to the gauge cluster for the outgoing model, pretty simple. We have the analog gauges on both sides with a small digital screen right in the middle. You can go through a few settings. There's not a whole lot to go through, but you can pull up the miles per hour, go into a set menu to look at some screen settings as well as your goodbye screen. There's some gauges to look at as well as your gear position. It's not too configurable, but it gives you some settings, which is nice to see. And then over on the new generation, still retains the analog gauges on both sides with a little bit bigger of a center screen. Same 3 buttons are on the left side of the steering wheel to control all of that information. And just like the outgoing model, not really too configurable. You can look at some averages as well as the time you've been in the vehicle, pull up TPMS, some other vitals like that. So it's nice to have those. It's just not too configurable. There's even a peak boost setting, which is different from the outgoing model. So if you like to pull that up and see that right in the middle, I think that's the coolest setting for that center screen. Going back to the outgoing model, there was a small screen right in the center of the vehicle where you could go through a lot more information just by using the control that you can see between both of the air vents, and look at some different information to configure, go through your maintenance, your driving history, car settings. It was nice to have that screen. It showed your time, outside temperature. You could even see some of the climate controls as well. There were also some other gauges that you could monitor, as well as being able to pull up where the power is being sent for the all-wheel drive system. And it even had a normal infotainment system just underneath that with all of the icons that you could go through, some buttons on both sides, volume tuning, everything like that. Really nice size for the screen with the amount of information that you can go through. But now as we move on to the all-new center screen for the WRX, much larger right off the bat, as you can tell. Really nice integrated system that had a good bit of information to go through. You could even look at your driving stats, pull up your maintenance, so you could go through all of that information. All the climate controls were nicely incorporated on both sides, as well as in the lower section of the screen. So it had a split style to it with the amount of information you could go through on the upper section and all of those climates down below. You could even pull up driver profiles, look at your maintenance. Really nice system to have. It was very easy to go through. It didn't offer a whole lot of information, but a little bit more than the previous model, and I like the vertical design that it had. just gave it a really updated interior look. And then going back to the previous model, underneath all those controls, there was a little bit of storage space and a 12 volt. And obviously we have that 6-speed manual with the leather shift boot. On the all new generation, same amount of space underneath those controls with a 12 volt, even 2 USBs and an auxiliary. And then we have that 6-speed manual. Sold in 85% of the WRX models, so this is a very common transmission. It is now standard on the 2022 with a CVT being an optional transmission. But now let's get both of these out on the road and see how they drive. Not doing anything too crazy in this, but this gets up and moves, and I love too that you can see what gear you're in right in the center of that LCD screen. So if you do forget for whatever reason, it's right there in front of you, which is helpful if you're taking this on some back mountain roads or even out on the track. And it's a very easy manual to drive. I've read through some comments on my previous WRX videos, and this would be a great first car if you've never been in a manual or you've never driven a manual transmission vehicle. And the clutch pedal is very light, making it easy to drive. The bite point is kind of quick and engaging, so it's not too tricky. You can get used to it fairly quickly, or hopefully you can. And then the shifter is very nice. I love how smooth it is. You know when you're in that next gear, it just has a great feel to it. This car is also really easy to rev match on the downshifts. We'll take this corner here, not going fast of course, but give it a little bit of gas and we're already back up to the speed limit. Every time Subaru comes out with a new redesign, it's always much different than the previous generation, obviously. And I think a lot of people do like the previous generation WRX a little bit better than this one. However, I think it's really cool. I like the sporty characteristics that it has. Like all of that black cladding is what it's called, surrounding the fender flares and the lower section. I think it just gives it a little bit more of that sporty design. It's a little bit more modern, but I do think a lot of people do like the previous generation. The bite point doesn't feel like it engages too late. It's kind of all at once. So it's very easy to shift. Shifter is also smooth, a little bit notchy, but that's what you like to feel. So when you get into that next gear, it'll just click. But clutch pedal is super lightweight. You could definitely daily drive this. And a lot of people do. This is their daily driver. You want something that's practical. And I still think it's very awesome that Subaru makes the 6-speed manual standard. You can opt for a CVT transmission. I have never seen a CVT Subaru in my life because, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, 85% of WRXs are sold with the manual, obviously because they come standard. I wish I could give it more gas for today, but just a slight acceleration there. It is so smooth in that power delivery. It's easy to rev match too. I love how close the pedals are. So I can touch the gas and the brake with my right foot and obviously do the clutch with my left foot. And now coming back to our final thoughts between the outgoing model and the all-new 2022 Subaru WRX. The biggest change between both of these models is that the structure for the all-new 2022 is much different than the outgoing model. It's not based on the same platform. There were some changes here and there that I found. And then the biggest difference that I did find while driving these both out on the road is the 2022 was much smoother to drive as far as the clutch engagement goes. On the previous model, as you heard me say, the bite point was about halfway. You really had a quick engagement for that clutch. On the 2022 year model, it was much more smooth going all the way out. I could definitely feel the shifts being much smoother as well. So the bite point is not quite as engaging as the older model. I think that's very helpful, especially if this is your first manual or you just want something that is a little easier to drive. Very smooth on the clutch, very easy to shift. Both of the shifters felt exactly the same. And then another big change for the interior is the size of that infotainment system. I think it looks really good, especially for this sporty sedan. Kind of gives it more of a luxurious style to it with the size of that screen. Everything else is pretty much the same. The exterior design obviously is a little bit different. I don't think that's everyone's taste, having the black fender flares as well as the lower side skirts and the surround. Like I said in the beginning of the video, kind of looks like a Subaru Outback, one of those lifted ones, the Wilderness models. And I don't think it looks quite as sporty as the previous generation. Maybe there's some aftermarket parts for those to be changed, because I don't think that's going to stop people from buying the WRX. It's a very common vehicle, very popular as well. And it's one of the few manual sedans that you can buy that's very sporty, performance oriented, and has a lot of tuning potential. So comment down below, let me know your thoughts on the all new redesigned 2022 Subaru WRX. I kind of like the previous model a little bit better, and I know that now, since the STI may not be made, the previous generation WRX STI is probably going to go up in value because of that. Hopefully we see a new redesigned. It might have a hybrid system in it somewhere, so we don't know yet. We'll have to see, just to throw that in there. But let me know down below, what are your thoughts on the all-new 2022 year model? And if you enjoyed today's video, give it a huge thumbs up and consider smashing that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads. I will see you all in the next video.